Okay, I think we're all systems go. There we go. Just double check again that that slide presentation is viewable. Absolutely. Yep, got nods. That's great. Oh, okay, well, let's get started. First of all, just thank you so much, Bonnie, for making the time to come and join us. I know you've got a really busy life, and I know this, but when you first turned up, you had your seatbelt on because you're in between two two important meetings. So thank you so much for making the time. And I'm really personally really excited to have you on board as a paddler. It's yeah, super exciting for me to come just have a chance to have a chat with you. So thank you very much. Um,
Thank you. Such a pleasure. Thanks. So excited to be here.
yeah, no, it's really nice to make the connection. And my name's Toby Story. I'm the owner of Southern Sea Ventures. And yeah, this evening I just yeah, looking forward to really hearing hearing from Bonnie about her experiences. We'll just do it. It's really quite a short, sharp um, overview of Bonnie's experience, and then we'll get into a little bit of detail about the trip that we're working on together in Tasmania this year. And yeah, Bonnie, maybe I'll just hand over to you. Would you like to do a quick introduction?
Thanks so much, Toby. So I'm Bonnie Hancock. I live on the beautiful Gold Coast. And mid-COVID in 2020, I picked up a book about Freya Hoffmeister. So the book was called Fearless. And Freya actually paddled around Australia in 2009 in 10 and a half months, becoming the fastest ever to do so. So she beat the two blokes before her to do that. And, up until I read that book, she had that Guinness World Record. We were in lockdown. It was like ghost town on the Gold Coast, as you all remember. There wasn't much to do, and I had a whole 12 months of ocean ski races cancelled. So I thought it would be a good idea to get my 8 kilogram carbon fiber ski and do a big loop, a big clockwise loop around Australia. So I left in December 2021 after 12 months of intense planning and research and putting our life savings into it, selling our cars. That was only a drop in the ocean. So it was scrapping together the rest of the money. We actually came up with half the money. That's all we could come up with, and we took off. I found a skipper and crew crazy enough to come with me, and basically in 8 months and 10 days, I returned back on the Gold Coast as the new Guinness World Record holder. I did it in 254 days, and along the way, I actually managed to break the 24-hour record for women a few times, and then get the overall 24-hour record, which was 235 kilometers in 24 hours. So bulging discs, couldn't straighten my fingers at the end, couldn't lift my hands above my belly button by the time I got home. But yeah, best thing I've ever done. And I wrote a book and made a documentary afterwards.
God, what an introduction. That's so amazing. You know what's really quite cool? I mean, at least over half the people who come on our trips are women, and we have we've got a large number of women that do paddling. And isn't it cool that both the fastest times are held by women for Australian circumnavigation? Yeah.
I have a funny little story about Guinness World Records as well. I grew up, with that book, looking at the people with the longest toenails and just being fascinated by the book. And basically, you apply to be in the book. I didn't think I made it in. I didn't hear anything back from them, and I was just in Queenscliff in Victoria, and I wandered into a bookstore, and it was the Guinness World Records 2025. I opened the book. I was just flicking through, and I couldn't see myself in the C section. And I happened to turn to a random page and I saw my ocean ski there. So I thought, how cool to get an ocean ski in the Guinness World Records. So that was the highlight of my month. Totally unexpected.
Absolutely. I've just got a series of images from Bonnie's trip that yeah, I'll sort of let Bonnie talk to. So Bonnie, first one, Bonnie sent me a wide selection of images, and I just picked out a few that I thought might twig some really interesting stories. So Bonnie, I know that the Australian coastline has some formidable sections of coastline everywhere, but there's some particularly big cliff sections around the country. Maybe some people don't know so much about. Would you like to share a little
Uh,
bit? Yeah.
Absolutely. So the Zoodorp Cliff is, as cliffs are a 250-kilometre stretch of limestone cliffs. They run up the West Australian coast and basically they lead into Shark Bay. So I was going clockwise around the country. I was actually the first person to do that. And that was about getting the East Australian current down the east coast. So I came down, crossed across the Bight and then into WA. So thankfully by this stage of the trip, I was quite conditioned because there's nowhere to anchor along there. My catamaran couldn't anchor. We did that stretch in 2 days to get it done. And when I turned that corner, my crew actually saw a great white shark near my ski. I was 80 kilometers into the paddling day. I saw them gesturing wildly on the boat. I paddled up, they said, get on the boat. And they told me what they'd seen. It was the jagged edges of basically great white fin come up and take a deep dive under my ski. I had absolutely no idea. And with Guinness World Records, you've got to get back in the water in that same spot the next day. I'll never forget climbing into that water and just saying to my crew, music's not enough today. I need you to talk to me. And I really learnt the importance of team, probably on that day more than anything. They told me the silliest childhood stories and jokes and riddles, and they talked to me all day and they got me through because I was pretty scared. Um, and we employed that same tactic in the crocodile waters at the top of the country. But that's the Zoodorp Cliffs, and it's actually fascinating when you bring up the map of Australia, pop it on satellite mode. That's what I did before this paddle. Type in the Zoodorp Cliffs and you can see that stretch of cliffs up the West Australian coast.
Fantastic. And it's just north of Shark Bay, as you said, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And obviously you talked about the shark experience, but I'm sure there's probably some enjoyable wildlife experiences as well on the trip. It's a lot of time on the ocean, so no doubt you had some visitors.
Absolutely. So this one here, it is a dolphin. So we do have a follow-up shot where you can see the second dolphin in the picture, but I always like to kind of tease the audience when I do keynotes and ask them if it's a dolphin or a shark. Usually I get about a 50-50 kind of with the responses. This was off the 12 Apostles, so down in Victoria. It was when I really remember the water getting colder, sometimes half a degree in a day it would drop. I packed a few thermals. The only thing warm enough was a 4-3 mil steamer wetsuit to keep me warm. But I had wildlife tailing me from day one. So from day one on the catamaran, they could see sharks sort of attracted to my rudder. The dolphins tended to more ride at the front of the boat. They liked to race me. They would come up alongside me and come in front, and they were so much fun. And honestly, sometimes I was surrounded by 40 dolphins in the middle of the ocean. They would stay with me for hours. One time I had 100 dolphins in a pod pass in front of my ski, and I just put my paddle down and just said, how good is this? I was about 100 kilometers out to sea most days. So it's 40 kilometers when you stand on the shore and look to the horizon. So that's no land in sight for most of this trip. And it can be pretty terrifying out there at times. But when the dolphins were there, I always felt safe. So I very much welcomed their company.
Amazing. 100 dolphins.
100 dolphins. It was like an army of dolphins, and they were just passing in front. There were little ones and big ones. We actually, as part of the documentary, we got it onto KO and Foxtel a few months ago. It's called Diamond of the Sea. You can actually see that scene of the 100 dolphins because my crewmate ran inside. He got the camera, he whipped it out, and he actually caught the scene with the dolphins, and you can just hear them yahooing. It was just the most incredible memory.
So fantastic. I've had that one time in my paddling career where they've had a couple come up and have a look at you, and then all of a sudden, the rest of them pop up and they're all around you. So
They're so intelligent, they say have that connection with humans, and I do truly believe that. Yeah.
hmm. Um, and obviously not all smooth sailing. I'm sure you must have had some pretty rough conditions out there. So
Yes, this is one of my favorite photos of the trip. This was 500 kilometers out to sea in the middle of the Great Australian Bight. So As I said, I was the first person to cut directly across the bight. I had to make that choice when I got to South Australia. So why? People ask, why would you go straight across? It saved me 1,000 kilometers of paddling. So because I was chasing a world record, I thought, okay, save 2 weeks or so of paddling, if not more. So I decided to do that. And once you're out in that bight, you're in it basically, because you've got to, at the end of this record, submit all the GPS data and it has to line up perfectly. So once we got to the middle of that bight, it was around 20 to 25 knot tailwinds most days. There was one day where it went dead flat, one day where it turned into a headwind, but it took me 12 days to cross the Great Australian Bight. I lost 8 kilograms in seasickness in that time. I could absolutely hold nothing down from about day 3. I actually lost the ability to walk on the boat, so I had to crawl from about day 3 on the boat. And somehow I found a way to get 100K done each day. I would look to my crew, I would draw inspiration, the fact that they were out there in it with me, and I thought my job is just to get this ski across here as fast as I can. So it's amazing what your body can do when you can somehow convince your mind that you're capable. And in the bight, I had to dig deeper than any other section of this trip. And I think I came out of that a different person in a good way. I don't think I was resilient enough to go through the crocodile waters of the Northern Territory until I crossed that bight. I crossed that bight, and I remember, first of all, just collapsing onto the sand. And I remember looking left and right when we climbed to the top of the island at the expanse of water and saying, we conquered that. That's still to go. And I thought, everything we just went through, nothing is going to stop us. We're going to get this record. We're going to get home. So that was really a defining moment at the trip. And I'm sure you've all had moments in your life where it's a moment that makes you and you find yourself stronger than you thought you were. That was the bight crossing for me.
I'm speechless. But
It was a lot of fun. We were out there and we were joking, saying, if we could find a way to get people out here on like a barge or something, this would be incredible, like Red Bull adventure race, to have people race across here in the middle of the ocean. Just logistics could be a bit of a problem.
that sounds like the kind of thing kind of challenge I like.
It was honestly so much fun. Like, apart from the seasickness, and my speeds were reaching 28 kilometers an hour at their maximum. I was leaning back and not putting a paddle in the water for sometimes 500 meters. That's how steep the runners were. I've never had anything like that in Molokai, the race in Hawaii, on the Gold Coast, big seas. It was unbelievable. So you never know, maybe one day.
That sounds fantastic. Excuse me, I'm just plugging in charge cord. Yeah. Bonnie, you just touched on the north and the crocodiles. You said the bite sort of set you up for that. So
Yeah.
maybe, yeah, I've never spent time in the big, really real crocodile country on the water. I've been up there, I've been around the rivers, I've hiked up there and explored the coast a little bit, and I've thought
Yeah.
about it that many times. I'd love to do a trip there and think, oh no, no way. And then, it pops up
Yeah.
every couple of years, but yeah, never quite got the courage. So yeah, how was it? Tell me.
Totally. So yes, you can see the images there. So this is the King George River at the very top of the country. Again, if you have a bit of a look on the map, it gives you some idea geographically. And this crocodile, that rock on the left-hand side, that's where the crocodile was under. And the thing about the crocs, they're like a silvery grey colour. So I always thought they were like a bright green, like little kids' toys. That's just what I assumed. These crocs, they blend in with the water, they blend in with the rocks. There's a reason they've been at the top of the food chain for so long. I wanted to see a croc whilst not in my ski, so I was grateful to see that. But just before this, we had the scariest probably and night of the trip. The boat got stuck in an eddy, so it's a circular current. It runs off of islands, and it makes me believe the Bermuda Triangle is a thing, because this pulled a 10-ton catamaran into this eddy. It had maybe a 30-meter diameter, so it's going around and around. sorry, probably more like a 20-meter diameter. I'm following this boat. It's nighttime. There's no moon. The crew have torches out to the side of the boat looking for crocodiles. I remember the torches stopping in a particular spot and thinking that's probably not great. The skipper called out, "Stay close," and I thought he was talking about the current. 10 minutes we went around and around in this whirlpool, and after 10 minutes we broke the current and mowed it away. After another 10 minutes of motoring, they stopped the boat and pulled me aboard. They told me the next day what they'd seen. They'd seen a crocodile 10 meters out to the side of that current with the torch, and 10 minutes later, they'd seen it again. So essentially, it had followed me. Now, just like with the shark, I had to get back in the water the next day, knowing what was in those waters. I climbed down into that ski. The water was beautiful and clear, which is not what I wanted. And I remember all day just imagining that there was things in the water. And the scary thing is in the Northern Territory, there's a lot of logs. There's a lot of debris off of the island. So occasionally, other than me imagining there was things, there actually genuinely were logs in the water. And I will just never forget just paddling past these logs and just expecting it to jump out at me, really. And I would often call to the crew just to come to the deck and just have a bit of a look. And they would sort of do a bit of a scan and could see nothing. So yeah, the Northern Territory is by far the scariest stretch. The Great Australian Bight conditions wise, but the Northern Territory, just that still, flat, calm. I would take my music out. I would be able to hear every splash, and I would quickly put that music back in. So yeah, the Northern Territory, absolutely beautiful. And I remember the skipper saying, "Do not even think about swimming in the water," when we would anchor it at an island, white sand, clear water. And he just said, "Don't even think about it. This is exactly where they like to hang out." So yeah, I have a lot of respect for, I mean, they've been around tens of thousands of years for a reason, at the very top of the food chain. They're patient, they'll stalk, they'll watch patterns, as opposed to sharks are a bit more opportunistic.
Exciting stuff. Um, Now, just on a lighter note, I just thought I'd throw in this just a beautiful, beautiful photo, and it reminds me of just being on the water in those wonderful conditions. So, there must have been some real magic on your journey as well.
Oh, totally. So I call it golden hour paddling at the end of the day in the Northern Territory. The sun, as in the Western Australia, beg your pardon, where the sun sets over the ocean. And that was always my favorite part about visiting Western Australia. And literally this here, this is near Dampier when you look on the map. So this is more up the coast towards northern Western Australia. And my crew snapped this. This was an 120-kilometre day. So by this stage of the trip, I was paddling 120, 130, sometimes 140 in a day was pretty standard. And that was just to continue to get the kilometres done while the weather was good, because we knew that the southeasterly trade winds were going to hit us at the top of Queensland. So it was really a race to get as many kilometres done as you could. By this stage, I was about a month and a half ahead of the world record. So, sparing disaster, we were really on track to get there. Mind you, this was through COVID. So this actually reminds me, when we crossed into WA, that we actually had to get an exemption. And my husband, Matt, who was supposed to be on the boat the whole time as the conduit between me and the skipper, he actually had to stay on land for the 8 months. So we wouldn't see each other for sometimes a month at a time or weeks at a time. And that rock, that person who'd always been there in my Ironwoman career, was no longer there. So I had to really learn to lean on the crew and the people around me in a way that I probably never had. But Matt was incredible, and got us that exemption into WA, continued to raise sponsorship money. There were times in this trip where we were absolutely running on a shoestring budget and had very limited funds, and Matt was continuing to find sponsorship. So it would never have got to the finish if it wasn't for him and my crew. And you'll hear me when I talk about this record, I'll always say we. I find it uncomfortable saying me or I, because Yeah, him, Matt, and the crew, they were everything. So yeah, WA, absolutely beautiful. Once we crossed into the border, we thought, okay, we're pretty good here. The other states were open, but at one stage we were talking about actually paddling in international waters, which is 800 kilometers out to sea, and actually staying that far out if we weren't able to get into WA. So it was pretty touch and go for a bit there.
Absolutely stunning. How how wonderful. And yeah, I just returned from Western Australia actually, and it is a somewhat unexplored sort of paddling, not unexplored, but there's a lot of
Yeah.
coastline up there, and it is something else. It is absolutely beautiful.
Oh, Ningaloo, so near Exmouth, my favorite stretch of coast, and whale sharks and turtle. I saw 25 turtles in one day. Just beautiful, beautiful wildlife. There's plenty of sharks over there, which is always in the back of your mind, but they're sort of everywhere. The sharks like the warm and the cold water, but yeah, WA, I think the most stunning stretch of coastline is the north of WA.
Amazing. So I might just switch over and just have a little bit of a chat about the trip that we're running with Bonnie, and we'll come back and do some questions in just a few minutes.
Oh,
So just in terms of the trip, can you guys see my cursor up here? So we're currently running trips around Freycinet, camping expeditions on Bruny Island, lodge based, and then also on the Three Capes, and that's where Bonnie will be joining us in early February. So the trip is right at the end of January, beginning of Feb. And in terms of Bonnie's involvement, Bonnie will be joining us for a lovely evening. And we'll be doing a full documentary screening and, of course, a much more in-depth Q&A session, followed by a day on the water, which will be adventure. We're looking for an adventurous paddle just to suit Bonnie's interests, but also some opportunity for instruction and learning. And I guess I also wanted to sort of put in there, like, okay, Bonnie, you've done some pretty wild and like pretty epic paddling. The trip is not designed as an epic paddling trip, although it would be epic just because Bonnie's there. But it's more about learning about, I think, resilience and Bonnie's experiences, and sharing that interest and joy of paddling and being on the water, and being part of a sort of a team of people participating in the journey. So, and of course, we'll also have the best of the Tasman Peninsula. So we'll be looking to select the best opportunities given the weather, as we like to do. It's lodge accommodation, so comfortable lodgings. And of course, we're still including all of the gourmet Tasmanian produce and possibly, glass of wine or beer, etc. Those that partake. And I had a couple of questions, actually, if that's okay, Bonnie.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Now, where am I going to start? I guess the first question, I'm going to make it, would you do it again? That's
That is one of the most common questions. It's so funny.
yeah.
Why on earth would I do it, and would I do it again? They're the two that pop up. So it's a very fair question. No, I wouldn't paddle around Australia again. But the only reason is I felt as though the way that it unfolded was just so incredible, and all of the people who helped us along the way, it was just the most amazing experience. I feel like, number one, I definitely couldn't do it quicker than I did it. We got tailwinds down pretty much to South Australia. We got flat conditions to WA, but then we got the strongest southeasterly trade winds in 5 years. My body, I had, oh my gosh, was absolutely wrecked at the end. So I don't think I could do it to my body again. But there's a lot of water in the world, and I feel as though there's a lot of unexplored territory out there. I would love to do something in a continent a little further south that's freezing. But yeah, definitely exploring other parts of the world. And I really, really hope someone does this again, does this one day, because I would love to mentor someone and just all of the mistakes that we made, kind of guide them in that way. Because we didn't really have a blueprint, crossing the Bight, etc. But I hope someone gets my record, and I'm sure probably a young surf lifesaver might have a crack at it. I hope they do.
Absolutely. Yeah, the records are there for the taking, aren't they? They're there to be broken. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even with the 235K, like we were really hoping for big wins. That was Airlie Beach to Townsville. We went 2 weeks after the expedition and did that. We got 15 or 12 to 15 knot tailwinds most of the time. I remember being incredibly frustrated for the first 100 kilometer. I actually tore my bicep 70 kilometers in trying to push too hard. So I had to finish that with a grade 1 bicep tear. I couldn't paddle on the other side for the last 10 kilometers. So I think if someone got really ideal conditions, that record's definitely there for the taking too.
Fantastic. And how did you start with paddling? I mean, you've come an incredibly long way, but how did you get into it to start with?
Yeah, for sure. So I was a relatively late bloomer in terms of surf lifesaving. So most of the Iron women and Iron men are on skis around 14 these days. I got on a ski when I was almost 18 years old. My very first ski race was the professional Nutrigrain trial. I remember lining up next to Naomi Flood and Christy Munro and just thinking, what am I doing here? Fortunately, it was flat conditions and I managed to get through that trial, and I did 10 years of professional Ironwoman racing. Um, the ski was always my weakest leg, for sure. It was always what let me down. It was always what costed me a few wins along the way. And around the age of 28, after that Ironwoman racing, I was sort of seeking a different challenge. I'd always watched the women in the ski race and just thought that's the absolute ultimate in terms of strength and mental fortitude. I thought, I'm going to have a bit of a crack at this individual ski paddling thing. And so I started putting effort into that. And I found this strength and power that I didn't have, particularly when I was younger. I got in the gym, I got really, really strong. And I actually found myself winning the Queensland title and on the podium at the Aussies. And from there, it led into ocean ski paddling, which I actually absolutely loved. And I sort of traveled around the world titles, the Molokai, the whole shebang on the ocean ski. So I was a relatively late bloomer in terms of surf life saving. And I know some people come into ocean ski paddling in middle age. It's just the coolest thing that you're never too young, you're never too old to enjoy ski paddling. And it's just such a different perspective of the water than swimming. You can talk to people, you can actually see what's around you. That's my favorite part about ski paddling. So, longevity, I think I'll just always paddle skis because it's my favorite sport. And I've done a lot of sports in my time, but nothing compares to it.
Oh, fantastic. And is there one piece of equipment other than, of course, your kayak and paddle that you couldn't do without?
Oh, that's a really, really good question. I do love getting out on my Mal. I've been doing that a bit more recently, actually, on the Gold Coast. We've had some good surf. But I told you at the start of this, when we jumped on before, Toby, that I've just had, my husband and I just bought a new little staffy puppy
Yeah.
who's 12 weeks old. So I'm going to say, actually, it's the lead for my little staffy puppy because I'm teaching him to walk at the moment. So my bit of equipment at the moment is his little lead. He's so cheeky and naughty. But this morning we took him to the beach and he went up to his neck depth. So it's just the coolest thing. Sharing the beach with him and just this whole new perspective. Anyone who's had a dog, like everything is just totally new and exciting. So yeah, that's my new little hobby at the moment is some nice walks on the beach and teaching him to swim soon.
Fantastic. Look, we've got a couple of minutes left. I might just open it up if anyone has any questions that they'd like to ask. So I'll just off send a little note to everyone which asks you to unmute your microphones. And I'll just check in the chat there. I haven't seen any come through, and I might what I might do actually, I'll just stop sharing the screen just so we get a bigger
Screen? Yeah, why not?
screen for sharing.
Just
Okay, there we go. Feel free, guys, to if you'd like to turn on your video and or microphone. And you look like you're poised to.
I'm just sitting here. I'm intrigued, Bonnie.
as to why you chose really to go clockwise. You just gave the one reason. And I know other people have paddled and even cycled the anti-clockwise because of the winds. And you've just said to the current on the East Coast.
I know it was a big risk in that
Yeah.
12 months leading in. So Sir Roger Badham, the famous meteorologist who, through about 10 degrees of separation I got onto, he said, while your body's conditioning at the start, you want to do these kilometers, if you go down the East Coast and use that East Australian current, that's going to help you and give you that assistance. He said you will get a weather window down in the Bight. You're going to have to wait for it. We only had to wait a few days, fortunately. But he said, when you get that weather window, you go. And it was taking a big risk. There was always the possibility of not crossing across the Bight if we didn't get the conditions for it. We always had that up our sleeve, but we got this 14-day weather window. It just worked out for us really well. If I did it again, I would definitely still go clockwise, because when we were going in December, down the bottom was freezing cold. Like it was 3 degrees ambient temperature, about 9 or 10 degrees in the water. So because we wanted to take off in December, we didn't want to go, that was a big factor as well, anti-clockwise with the heat at the top and the cold at the bottom. Obviously a lot of the skippers kind of sail across west to east. So yeah, I was planning to go anti-clockwise from the Gold Coast, and basically it was trusting in, he goes by clouds, and it worked out perfectly. So big risk. There was a big reward. People talk about the currents up the West Australian coast as well. They'd be pushing against us. We basically were pretty close to shore, so we didn't really have many currents up the West Australian coast. So yeah, it was a risk. But the backup plan was not to cut across the Bight if needed. So yeah, but in saying that, coming back down the Queensland coast into the southeasterly trade winds was
That's where I live too. It's always
absolutely
southeasterly.
right, brutal. So I'm so glad I was conditioned, because I could only go 60, 70K a day, as opposed to the 130 I was used to.
Well, interesting planning, yes.
Yes.
Formidable, still formidable, 60 to 70 kilometers, quite formidable. Yeah. Have we got any other questions that anyone would like to ask?
Bonnie, I'd like to know where you started from and finished.
Yeah, totally. So Mermaid Beach on the Gold Coast. We live, I don't know if you've been up here near Mermaid Surf Club, the Hedges Avenue that runs along the boulevard that runs near the beach. We bought just before COVID, thank goodness, and got our little ground floor unit there. So I was able to walk out my back door, across the road and to the beach, and pick my ocean ski up. I wanted to do that. I wanted to leave from Mermaid. Just my heart and soul is at that place. And it was incredibly emotional coming back there as well, and just returning home. And I had the most beautiful send off. But just a funny little story that I forget to tell people is, when I got in my ski, this is a lesson in check your equipment. The ski was far too long. So my sponsor had given me 3 skis. I didn't check it myself, which is a total rookie error as an athlete. I got in, I was trying to touch the pedals with my tippy toes, almost falling out through the shorey. And we were filming a documentary, and I just looked completely ridiculous. Fortunately, I stayed in it. And when I got out the back, I was able to jump out and actually fix the pedals up. But rookie mistake, with hundreds of people not being able to touch the pedals. The media was there, the cameras and everything. Oh my gosh. So if you're going to paddle around Australia, check your equipment.
Great tip. We've just got a few more, just 2 more minutes. So any other questions? Couple more questions?
It's not a question. I just like to say that's such an extraordinary story, Bonnie. Thank you. And the idea that you've paddled that far out of shore sounds scary, but to do that right around Australia is amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And one I like to say is all, and I'll tell more and more stories on the trip. I'm so excited for it, down in Tassie. But you can have doubts and do things anyway. And on this trip, there was so many times I doubted myself, and I know we do that in life as well. And honestly, from a week in, I put my paddle on my lap and I said, what have I got myself into? What have I got this crew into? We've invested our life savings and I cannot go any further. And I remember saying to myself in that moment, just get to one more month. Just get to 1 month. You can see how you go there. And I'm so glad I kept pushing, because by the time I got there, I was a total different athlete. And it's one of those things that you can have the doubt and the fear and do things anyway. So know that, you know, you can often see someone achieve something or see the gold medal and record. I can tell you it was messy and ugly and awful in so many sections, but you just find a way to keep on pushing. But I'm so excited for those that are going to be on the trip to meet you and share stories. And yeah, just so looking forward to it. My dad's from Tassie. I've only been there once, so he always goes on about the fact that I just did mainland Australia and didn't circumnavigate Tassie as well. So
Yeah.
this is a good
On
opportunity.
your list. Well, that
Exactly.
might be a good moment to wrap it up, because that's such wonderful words, Bonnie. Thank you so much. And really, yeah, we're really grateful for you to come along and give us your time. And yeah, I don't get to go on all the trips, but I'm going on this one. So
Oh, good.
I can't wait. Yeah, I'm really looking.
Amazing. Happy paddling, everyone. Enjoy.
Yeah.
I'll see you
Yeah.
soon.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Look
Thank
forward
you
to
again, Bonnie.
January. Yeah.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
God, it'd be exciting being on a trip with her.
Oh.